Hi, Wendy.
Hi, how are you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing okay. I'm doing okay.
Good.
And I apologize if there's any weird crunching or mewing. I'll show you here really quick. Oh, nope. I I was gonna try to switch cameras here. Uh,
Oh, there we go. Awesome.
so yeah. So
Love that.
yeah, I can offer a default kitten cam.
Yes, I like it. Yeah. So if
Yeah.
things are ever getting boring, you just default to kitten cam and we're good.
Yeah, my adult cat is not 100% thrilled, but he's doing okay. He's being polite.
Yeah.
So,
They'll work it out. Animals do.
yeah, 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 yeah. So,
So we'll give just a minute. I know Janice said she might be a minute or two late, and then Marty's coming in from the UK, and it's nighttime for him. So
yeah, it's got to be like middle. Yeah, it's very late.
yeah.
So I understand if he goes first, that's totally.
No, he's kind of been used to it. Like I've been on a couple of these with him, and that they've been even later, like his time, and somehow he kind of like snaps too. So good
Yeah,
on him, I guess.
yeah, that's dedication. That like between that or like us. Well, Australia though, it's tomorrow morning, I think. So
Maybe
that seems like it'd be a little less bad, but you would have maybe work conflicts.
right.
So
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
So everybody's situation is fun, and it's fun to find out where everybody is in the world and
yeah,
times, all that. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I feel boring for just being in Los Angeles, but
Well, me too. Yeah.
yeah,
Same thing.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
What do you have planned the rest of your Sunday then?
Oh, Game of Thrones finale.
Of course. That's like everyone in the world, pretty much.
Yeah, yeah, pretty much. Of course, tomorrow I'm on to Chernobyl.
Yeah, my friend has told me how good that is,
It
so I'm
is.
excited.
I've been to Russia and
Oh.
they nailed the whole Soviet vibe,
Mhm.
you know.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna have to watch it.
Yeah. And it's amazing because I didn't realize and I had read about it before, but it could have been so much worse. It could have been like a destroy half of Europe kind of thing.
Have you seen the footage from people going back there recently, like with the animals
Yeah.
and plant life? It's
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, the animals are doing great. I mean,
yeah,
for humans, that like extra 5% chance of birth defects is unacceptable, but
right,
compared with avoiding humans, that's,
right.
works for them.
Yeah, it's interesting. They have animals that hadn't been seen there in decades, like thriving now. It's crazy.
Yeah, 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 yeah. So, and I got onto this like extreme engineering show where they were talking about putting a new structure over the reactor.
Oh wow.
And it was like this big arch, like inspired by like big Zeppelin hangars.
Hmm.
And they built it just off site and like rolled it into place.
Oh wow.
It's pretty amazing if you ever, I think it was like somewhere like, oh, Science Channel, okay, I'll watch that.
Sure. Right. It sounds like Stephen King's The Dome or something. They're just like,
Yeah,
where they build that small town. Yeah.
yeah. About as big a feat of engineering, I think, if not more, because of radioactivity.
Sure. Yeah. No,
So,
that's very true. Are you excited for the Game of Thrones finale, or are you burned out of this last season like a lot of folks? Or both?
I'm I'm not expecting a happy ending
Yeah.
because they told us that ages ago.
Yeah. Marty?
It's like I don't hate it. I have notes,
Yeah, okay.
but
Fair enough. Marty, we're talking about Game of Thrones and whether I was asking Wendy if she was excited for the season finale or if she's burned out of this last season. So
that's a key question, right?
yeah.
I think it's been really mixed.
This last season has been really mixed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you guys think?
I'm hate watching at this point. I was hate watching since the third episode.
You just God, that sounds terrible, dude.
You know, my feeling is they needed to do something with Cersei.
Yes.
She was just drinking wine, and she's best when she's drinking wine and wrecking shit.
Yeah.
That's when she's interesting.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, I just think the women are just all their payoffs have really sucked.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been the major criticism of the last this series is that the women have been badly written, and I totally agree with it.
Yeah, which is strange because they were so excellently written. It's one of the standouts of the show.
It's just been, I mean, those conversations where men are discussing what to do with the women are fucking appalling. Excuse my language, but it's just, it was so bad.
Well, and then you look at like Brienne of Tarth, and the last time we saw her, she's reduced to tears. Excuse me.
It was terrible. What? That was just one of the real low points.
I feel like Brienne should have slapped him and then cried in private.
Yes,
that would have been better.
Agreed. Yeah. Like something simple, even like that. You're absolutely right. I don't mind.
We need to see it. We can see that she's emotional about it, but and then there's an issue over whether she should have slept with him as well.
Right. And I kind of get that. I could go with it. It didn't.
Yeah, me too.
It didn't take away per se, but it did the aftermath, which is what we're agreeing on.
Yeah.
The Daenerys turn didn't bother me, but the speed of which she turned certainly did.
Yeah, me too.
You know, the Hound and Clegane, like what a terrible way for him to end. He's such a great character.
Yeah, it's one of my faves. His arc has been probably one of the strongest, I think.
Yeah, and really fun to watch. He's such a great actor. And then, Wendy, your point about Cersei is 100,000,000%. She's been non-existent this entire season. She shows up, she looks out the window, she drinks some wine, she, cringes down a hallway, and then that's it. She's gone.
I mean, there's that whole story. Sorry, Wendy. Sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
You know, I think if Cersei would have done something with the rest of the wildfire,
right.
I mean, then Daenerys would have been completely justified in going berserk.
Yeah, I was waiting for that. It's funny you say it. Actually, the beginning of the episode when I saw where it was starting to go and they started to attack and the bells clearly weren't going to be rung on time and Jaime wasn't getting in, I'm like, well, the saving grace then will be the wildfire. And Cersei will either destroy her own people or she'll blow up Daenerys, and then neither happened. Nothing happened.
Yeah. You kind of see a little bit of the wildfire going off coincidentally, don't you?
You do. It had no impact.
Yeah, it just.
That made it all the worse for me because it's like it was there.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Use it, Cersei. You used it before. You have no problem with that.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, there's that whole storyline with Euron as well that was just completely underdeveloped. I mean, I don't know whether shit ended up on the cutting room floor. But, I mean, it was just, I mean, I totally agree with you on Cersei. She's one of the strongest characters of the whole of Game of Thrones. And they just, kind of wrote her out the last series. Terrible.
I feel like Euron was kind of hot topic Euron.
Right. That's really funny.
I quite like that fight scene between he and, and Jaime at the end. That was pretty intense. Mm-hmm. But, it was still kind of throwaway and very hard to believe.
Right.
Yeah.
They somehow their paths cross. Yeah, bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because they needed to, which is the worst.
Yeah, it was just some really lame. But I thought The Long Night was incredible.
Yeah.
That was an episode that just completely swept me along.
Mm-hmm.
What did you guys think of that one?
I wasn't a fan, but it's the best of this last season for sure.
Yeah, of this season, there have been better battles, and they went a little crazy. I understand realism, but they did go a little crazy with the darkness.
Yeah, but other than that, like it was stronger in a lot of the points. It certainly didn't bore me, shall we say, and it more than made up for it with the ending when she takes him out. I'm like, well, thank God that we don't have to deal with that anymore.
Yeah, yeah.
That was getting a little tedious.
And I was good with Arya doing it.
Yeah,
That was
I mean,
cool.
out of everybody, I'm most okay with Arya this season.
She became like the protagonist in that movie. In that episode.
Yeah.
He was like, especially, I love that. Even though it was a bit kind of like a game, a video game, but when they're in the library, that was pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, that I thought was kind of a nice little break. And I'm totally fine with her getting Gendry. Okay, girl, get what you want.
but she wanted it before is the only thing. If we would have we had a hint that they were into each other, but I didn't see it as a sexual or romantic thing. And it's fine that she has it, but again, I think just a layer or two beforehand, because the show has been so careful with those things all along, and that goes to kind of what I would say in closing. I would speak, I think, for most everyone that is mad at this last season. The reason people are mad is because for me anyway, it's not because it didn't work out the way I wanted it to, because I didn't have an agenda. I had things I liked more than others, but I was willing to go for the ride. I think the thing that makes me hate watch, right, to use my phrase, is that
your phrase entirely, dude? I've never heard that before, so it's pretty good.
I've heard it before. I can't take credit.
Yeah.
But the reason that I'm hate watching is because the craft has been lost. By and large, there are little beats, there are certain moments, but based on what has come before, I compared it to baseball, right? Which, sorry to be American for a minute, Marty, but
no worries, man.
but it's like a baseball team that wins every game of the regular season, which is an impossible feat, and then goes into the playoffs and the World Series and forgets everything that brought them to that point. And it's like, what? Like, how can that happen? Anyway.
Yeah. No, dude, that's a really good analogy or metaphor. It's like it is really disappointing kind of ending, and I really hope they kind of put it back a little bit tonight, but we'll see.
Yeah.
Jana, we're talking about Game of Thrones, of course. So.
Oh, I don't know that show because I don't have HBO. I would love to see it. Are you guys all fans?
Yeah. Well, I said I was hate watching at this point based on the last season, but I don't want that to spoil anything for you. It is a phenomenal show. One of the best ever been on TV.
I mean, I think up to like season 5, 6, it was pretty much one of the best shows.
Yes.
It reminds me a lot of the new Battlestar Galactica.
Yeah.
And that one got rushed at the end, and yeah.
Yes.
It's good to meet you anyway, Wendy.
Hi.
I'm Marty.
Nice to meet you.
It's a cool introduction. Let's talk about Game of Thrones. It's very topical.
Yeah, might as well just jump in the deep end here.
Right.
Hi, Jana.
So, Jana, you know Wendy, I'm assuming. Yeah?
I do know Wendy. Yes.
Hi.
Absolutely.
Cool. I figured as much. So what's fun is now that we have everybody here, we have 2 werewolf stories this week.
Oh, really? Wow.
What are the chances of that?
I know. They couldn't be more different from each other either. The only thing that connects them is that one word, werewolf, which is kind of cool.
Huh.
But yeah, tonally, directionally, all that, they're very, very different. So no offense to you, Marty, but I'll put you in the middle of the werewolves.
No problem, man.
Just for fun. So, Wendy, since you weren't able to join us last week, understandably, for Mother's Day, let's have you start. We'll tackle your werewolf tale first.
Okay.
Cool. So tell me a little bit about this. Like, how long has it been gestating for you? That kind of.
This is very new. Less than a month.
Oh, that's cool. And have you thought about writing in this space before, as far as like werewolves or this kind of, shall we say, fantasy? I know that's something that you've kind of been driven to before, but.
Yeah, I've taken stabs at it before. One that never quite got finished to my satisfaction was The Devil is a Motivational Speaker.
Uh-huh.
And I may go back to that again someday because I think it's too good of an idea, but nailing that is it's really hard.
Hmm.
And so I do like the space. I like the horror space. I have a more smaller family driven horror that I wrote over the winter that I'm pretty happy with.
Okay, cool.
So I'm thinking this is totally different but still technically horror.
Yeah, well, it has horrific elements, shall we
Yeah,
say,
yeah,
for
yeah,
sure, or could,
yeah.
depending on how they played out.
I mean, it's almost like sexy medical thriller with horror elements,
Uh-huh.
horror fantasy elements.
Yeah, no, I think so. The cool thing about where we are with TV, especially, or series, is that those things, people are greenlighting things like that in a way that we wouldn't have seen even a few years ago. You know, they're taking a chance, so to speak, on things that are combinations of genre and tone and those kind of things because there's room for it, which is great.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
I was just reading an article which is really good. Kevin Costner was talking about how series is so wonderful now, especially because the focus is on story, you know, and telling a longer form adventure or a story that has layers and characters and progress. And, you know, Game of Thrones, if it would have been reduced to a feature film, it would have been a mistake. You would have missed so many things. They
Yeah.
could have done it. They could have done a trilogy, but it wouldn't have been as powerful and impactful by any means. Cool.
Mhm.
So because we didn't get a chance to talk last week, did you have any thoughts on the notes/questions I sent you, or do you want to talk more about the new stuff you've sent? Both?
A bit of both. I mean, I really liked your questions
Mm-hmm.
because it made me, and it was kind of interesting because it led me in a slightly different. It led me to the dad dying as being either the inciting incident or the first act break. I haven't quite decided yet.
Yeah, yeah.
But she has to kind of take on her own agency and be a leader.
Yeah, no, I liked that a lot. I thought that was a cool thing, and
Yeah.
I know that didn't purely come from my question, but that she needed something to, like you said, make her kind of her own person in that sense.
Yeah.
Cool. I thought that was, it felt organic to the story you were creating rather than, ooh, what's a splashy thing I could do? It kind of made sense.
Yeah, yeah. And because I feel like the danger in this one is sort of bubbling up from behind because it's the company that she works for, and if it's too obvious right off, it's going to be less fun.
Totally, totally. And that leads me into a couple other questions, like as you go forward, just to make sure that that doesn't happen, is what are your thoughts about how two things, but they're tangential to each other. How did Emily come to work for David? And then how did David come to work there? Like, did one happen, which happened first? Do you know what I mean? In terms of, because since he's a
Yeah.
werewolf hunter, we want to be sure that's, yeah.
I think David is the founder of the company,
Okay.
and I think it's I need to do a little research and figure out just how many people work for 23andMe.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's smaller than, it's like somewhere between that and a medical testing company,
Mm-hmm.
like ones that are like looking for your like risk of this disease when you get a diagnosis or something.
Yeah.
So I think it's more than that, but maybe not quite 23andMe. And I'll have to like look at their Glassdoor and see
Mm-hmm.
just how big actually are they.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the way that it feels in what you wrote, is there somewhere between a genetics company like that and pharmaceutical almost, or medical based, which is cool because I think that, again, there's probably is a company that's exactly both. If not, we're leading toward that anyway in our world. I mean, really.
Acquisitions.
Yeah, which becomes a moral dilemma too. So do you envision if David started the company that he found out about werewolves through the company and he just hasn't told anybody that he's out to stop that particular, shall we say, mutation or genetic line, or what is your thought about that?
I think so. I think in the course of his work, he realized DNA is a lot more than he bargained for,
Mm-hmm.
and that's alarming to him. So yeah, I think that was something that built over time, and
Mm-hmm.
so, and I think Emily went into that line of work. She studied what she studied because she wants to understand this
Yeah.
family condition.
Yeah. I was hoping you'd say that because that makes sense as far as her motivation. It was David. I was more like, specifically, I want to know your thoughts about both, but specifically about him, because there's something kind of interesting about where he was at and how he found out about it. And what do you envision is why does he want to stop it so badly instead of, shall we say, experiment with it or use it in some other capacity? Because he could be rich from isolating that if he could do such a thing.
It would be the way I envision the genes. It's a double recessive.
Uh-huh.
So there's a very small number of people who can even become werewolves, and I think to his mind it's something that's so rare. And I think there's a little jealousy.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, how dare these other people have this cool stuff going on with their genes, and I can't even begin to have this. I mean, unless he started to like CRISPR into things, but I don't think that's going so well.
Right. So I think that would just be something to think about going even further as far as, I'll say it this way in a stupid way, right? But like why he hates so much, and why he's bent on killing them and ridding the world of them rather than using it or studying it further or whatever someone else's motivation might be. Because he's an interesting character, I think, to play off of, because we have those supposedly in werewolf lore, the hunter, that comes after them. You could even do something interesting if you want, like with the idea of silver. I don't know what that particular mineral or compound would have to do with genetics or whatever. Probably nothing, but anyway, there might lead you down some kind of a cool trail where you could play off of that.
Yeah, there's definitely some kind of silver or wolfsbane or something like that plays into how Arlo is going to get killed.
Oh, cool! Because that was another of my questions: is how did you think he died? Yeah.
Yeah, and I think Arlo was the experiment.
Mm-hmm.
And it would be interesting because I wonder if David would attempt to keep a couple of tame, quote unquote, werewolves. That I'll have to think about that because that might be like part of his manipulation.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's interesting because he almost becomes like a non-mutated Magneto. You know what I mean? In a certain way, if he does that. So that might be interesting too, and that's certainly a great character. And because you're dealing with genetics, X-Men is one of the first things that comes to mind. And I think this is different enough from that, where you're not playing off of that so much. But anyway, it's a cool template, at least in the back of your mind. How do you envision the werewolf side kind of pushing her along? Like, how do you envision that playing out through the series? And I'll be funny to say it this way, and hopefully it makes you laugh and isn't offensive, but do you picture it as like it's that time of the month, like for her, when the change is going to come? Or is it something that's ongoing that she's constantly keeping in harmony?
Well, I think that full moon is a required transformation. I think she can transform on other nights.
Kind of like the Hulk, Incredible Hulk.
A little bit, yeah. But I think for that full moon night, it's not a choice. It just happens.
Okay.
And because I'm trying to figure out, because she's the double, because like if you have one recessive gene, a full werewolf like Emily can bite you and turn you.
Yes.
So she's always going to be a little bit more powerful than someone who was turned. And I think she has like, and how many of like those dog senses, better smell, better hearing, and a lot of that, and just like sensing when somebody is not a good person.
Uh-huh. Yeah, it's almost like she has enhanced intuition and senses, to your point, which is cool. And personally, I think that's interesting versus, again, like the X-Men where laser beams come out of someone's eyes or something. It separates it that much more. It makes it more like she's an evolved human, we could almost say, rather than like some, alien or what have you, which is cool.
And I mean, it is running X-Men-ish because it's a gift, but it's a gift that's hard to control.
Right. Yeah, which is fine because again, you're taking something that's been around a lot longer than the X-Men, which is the werewolf myth or the wolfman myth, which appears in almost every culture. Because I've done a little bit of study on that for a show that we have that is very different even from this. So that part's kind of fascinating. How do you envision Emily being attacked? Because you have her being attacked and then saved, which I thought was cool.
Can I get back to you on that one?
Of course. Yeah, I just didn't know if you had any thoughts on it. How about...
I don't know if I have a set piece in my mind yet.
Okay. It will come. Yeah.
But that's going to be big on her making contact with the pack.
Mm-hmm.
So...
Yeah. Which is cool. What do you think about her wolf self emerging in the very opener? Like during their walk in the woods when they come across the real wolves, or maybe that's the revelation that she has that in her, and Arlo gives her a glimpse of him. I just think that that's a cool moment that you set up that might really instantly let the audience know some of what they're dealing with. Because then when you cut to Emily in the lab, it's like, oh, she's we know more about her, I guess.
Huh, that would be, because I was definitely going to do a flashback.
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean, it would maybe even just be like a one-page extension of the scene I already have.
Yeah, because you kept that very short, and it's very good, what you have. So I think there's room for another beat. And how far you go with it, of course, is totally up to you. But one of my notes on the actual writing was I think we want to see just a beat more of her character because we're learning about her as a young girl and then we're cutting 10, 15, whatever it is, years into the present when she's in a genetics lab. But if we know a little bit more about how maybe she learned something through that moment, not just about wolves, but about herself, do you know what I mean? It kind of catches us up to speed.
Yeah.
Because maybe I'm making it up and I don't want to give you a rule that doesn't make sense for your universe, but it's almost like the way that you wrote it, it's organic, like it's a rite of passage since she has the recessive gene, It's almost like you're a teenager, so hormonal changes will correspond with the wolf coming out for the first time, right? So
you're right on.
Giving us that moment and showing us that and how it would scare you, just like, again, not to be, too on the nose about it, but having two sisters, it's like, when you get your first period, you might have learned about it, but it's a whole different thing when you've experienced that. It's probably a bit jarring, and yes, you know what it is, but you haven't experienced it. So, and we all have that, whether it's physical or otherwise, those moments that you know what I'm saying, that we transform into humans. So that might be a good moment for it right there at that opener. Do you picture Emily and Sophia ever being lovers? Because I kind of like the idea that it seemed like you wrote in an attraction with them, which is just cool overall. Yeah.
I'm definitely, forgive the pun, but flirting with the idea.
Ah, cute. Yeah, I love it. I love, love, love. I think it's one of the strongest things that I hadn't really seen before. This idea of the wolf pack being polyamorous. But I think it ties into something that's, especially in the West, shall we say, or in America, there's, because of the internet, people are exploring their sexuality in a way that was very underground, never talked about before, or considered twisted or whatever. Like people are having diaper parties, for example, and it's like, okay, if that's your thing, go for it. You know what I mean? Like, but now you could have an invite in your inbox, and we never could do that really before because there wasn't the means to even find those people. So that idea and having that be something that's natural, because we do see that in nature. We see whatever we would label as bisexuality and polyamorism going on through the species. So why couldn't not only humans have that, but certainly this special kind of human, the werewolf?
Yeah. And there are definitely animals that kind of use that sexuality as like a social glue.
Yeah.
So.
Absolutely. And so, I think that was really, really interesting. And I haven't studied, understandably, the sexual component of a wolf pack. I don't know if it's like there's the alpha and he's the only one that can mate. I know that happens with like lions, tigers, that kind of thing. But anyway, there might be something there for you too.
I think wolves are a little more hierarchical, but werewolves are grayer wolves.
Well, you can create what it is, just like Anne Rice kind of identified her own kind of vampire, it's like.
Because, one thing that I noticed in watching a lot of movies is there is often a very sensual or sexual component to it.
Yeah. Well, it's that whole, like, not to be funny about it, but that beast inside kind of thing. And, there's that, we even call it animal sexuality and those kinds of things. So, there is a definite correspondence. And it's also, I think, why as humans we keep going back to those stories, whether it's vampires or werewolves, they fit that same mold in that sense. It's like there's a power there that they have that most of us don't, right? So, there's a danger kind of factor mixed in with that too. And playing with that, I think, is, something that you can do a lot with, even in brief little scenes or moments. So why do you think Arlo left the pack? But I like that idea a lot.
Yeah. I think in a way, my gut is to say like overprotective parenting. That he got this pack and the lovers, and how would she feel growing up in the middle of this? Like he just had that little bit of a conservative streak on his human side.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah. So play with that. If they thought that if he thought that she would kind of be swept up into the motivations of the pack mentality versus letting her have a chance to learn who she is and that kind of a thing, like that, there's a beauty in that.
Yeah, and I think he was thinking like, oh, this is a little wild. I think I'd rather just raise her on my own. And I don't know what happened to the mom.
Yeah, and you might find that you just need a beat to establish it and not linger on it, or that it becomes a more important thing for her to discover. I don't know, but
yeah, I have a feeling it might be a not linger thing, because I think I have a lot to get through.
Yeah, exactly. So just keep that in mind as you go through. Maybe you realize you need it to be more, and maybe you don't. I was just dealing with that in a totally different project where the writer, it's just through conversation, not because of me per se, but bouncing it off of me, realized she didn't need to know anything about a dad in that case, who was like non-existent in the formation of the main character's life. And so we were like, well, if he's non-existent in her life, then he doesn't matter. If he's not going to ever show up and have an impact, then don't mention him. There's no need. Yeah. And then who do you envision killed Arlo?
I think David or somebody who works on his behalf.
Yeah, it could too be someone from the pack that he left. Just a thought, because that happens in nature too. It's like, you left and formed your own thing, and now you're encroaching on our territory.
Mhm.
Ooh,
I mean, if anything, I would think that would be more to when the mom died.
probably. But if he went on the run and he hasn't been found, I'm just saying.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Whatever makes the most sense, but it could lead her down a road to discover a lot deeper
Mhm.
things, and almost ignore the fact that the real enemy is in her own workplace.
Yeah, yeah.
So there's lots of ways you can play with it, which is cool.
Mhm.
So the last thing that I had was I really liked the actual writing when you got into the scene. I know it was brief, but it did everything that it should do. It created a great kind of visual sense of where they were, it established the characters, with that note that I think you could have a little beat more about her, and then it kind of got out when it needed to too, even though you have room to expand on it. So yeah, good stuff. I would just keep going in whatever fashion kind of makes the most sense, but sometimes we as writers work best just kind of going for it and getting into the actual writing, and the story kind of tells us as we go, and other times you might need to spend a beat to really craft it out before you go into it. So
I feel like I have a general destination, and I am thinking of this still as a feature.
yeah,
And I'll see. I mean, it might end up just being a long pilot, and I'll let it go where it wants to go.
hmm
So
yeah, I would say absolutely. It feels like a feature now, but yeah, you might find that mechanism, for lack of a better word, to expand it and realize, oh, I have way more story I could tell. So
yeah,
cool.
yeah. So I think especially for a feature, as long as I have a general destination, I'm good. Um, I try to plot a little tighter for TV just because it's a tighter format.
Yeah, yeah. No, very cool. So I'll look forward to continuing to go down this journey with you. So yeah, very cool.
Yeah, cool. Okay.
Wendy, have you what do you watch or have you watched Grimm?
A little bit of it, yeah. I need to look and see what episodes would be most
A
relevant.
lot of it. I mean, one of the main
Yeah.
characters is a werewolf in it.
Yeah. And I
I'm just
loved,
thinking, in terms of what if you were thinking as well.
and I loved something like True Blood. I need to go in also in a little Teen Wolf too. I haven't had a chance.
My favorite werewolf, and anything to do with is American Werewolf in London.
That was that was good. It had been a second since I had watched that, but I did that. I watched that one in my research.
I saw that at the cinema when I was a teenager, which is a long time ago, and it's still with me. That was a movie that, I don't know, changed the way I thought about cinema.
Yeah, it was just so well done. Yeah.
Yeah, well, to combine the, it's comedic tone, but also incredibly horrific in parts, and the transformation. It was seminal at the time, wasn't it? It was in terms of technology. It was a key movie, and it still stands the test of time as well. If you see it, it's cool.
Absolutely.
John Landis, he was quality.
Yeah, I actually haven't seen it, so I'm going to have to watch it. I certainly know about the movie.
Oh, you've never seen it, man? Dude, especially if you're British, it's got so many nods. Even though it's an American director, but he kind of cut his teeth over here, and it's got a lot of nods to British culture. There's a pub in it called the Slaughtered Lamb.
Nice, I like it.
And that was such creepy locals.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Anyway, it's a good reference point, eh? Good luck with it, Wendy.
Thank you.
Cool. So Browntown, Marty, you got quite a bit of progress done. Well done, sir.
How you doing, man? Yeah. Well, going back over it, I was like, bloody hell, it's just full of dialogue. It's bullshit.
Not at all. That's what's going to help you keep going. So I would rather see you again, like I have some notes, but it's not anything super extensive because I think you're on a roll to figuring things out that you maybe didn't quite have down, and also getting to the points that you do know you want to get to. And I would rather see you do that and then go back and say, I guess I don't need this in dialogue, or I don't need this line. I could do it visually rather than stop and go back over that. But
Well, man, I'm really glad you said that, because I just started watching, rewatching Breaking Bad for I don't know how many times, just because, Game of Thrones is so disappointing. And I'm like, how do you tell it visually? And it's such a masterwork in how to tell a story visually. And it's brilliant. And I'm just looking at, there's things I still see in it I've never seen before. Everything is green. It's just like it's green everywhere, but I don't even remember seeing that before. It's so weird. So much. It's just, the kind of, anyway, the colors and how they act as metaphors in it. And, and I just thought about, anyway, it just made me think, I've got too much bloody dialogue. I need to bloody tell the story visually. I was hating myself, basically.
Yeah, and I'm just here to tell you don't, because
dude, thank you.
Yeah, through that dialogue, you're getting an understanding, and I think it probably makes the most sense because you're literally talking out your own thoughts as a writer through the character, so that makes sense.
Okay, cool, man. Well, I appreciate you saying that, dude. But I did feel like I got a bit, there was a flow going last week, and you never know, I might get pretty close to the end this week. I intend to.
Yeah,
I'll see how I get on.
I hope so. I think that would be great, because you're certainly leading up well toward a big explosive finale, which is fun.
Yeah, no, totally. And I was thinking also just about theme, to go back and just really focus thematically about, what is it really about, this story? Is it really a search for justice, or is it, a search for truth in one's relationship? I think it's more about that. So I kind of thematically, I'm not sure whether I've nailed it. That's why I'm kind of bringing it up.
Well, I think that on an overarching theme, which works for both the literal investigation and then the Tony search, is that it's not about accepting things as they look on the surface. It's about getting to the truth that's underneath what we see and are presented with. Because if you look at the town of Cornwall, Penzance, that whole area, it looks this quaint little village, and oh look, you can surf here too, isn't that lovely? But underneath it, there's heroin and all these murders and drug dealings and evil going on. And Jimmy seems like the best guy in town. He knows everybody. He's gregarious. He's generous. He cares for other people. He's a good boyfriend. He hasn't done anything to fuck that up. He's been a great substitute dad, but he's this killer who's destroying the very town that he's, has a shop in. So, I think that's your theme for sure.
You still buy it that Jimmy is the antagonist?
Yeah, and I think that will just come out even more because you're only at the point now where that's being revealed to Tony. So you wouldn't want to reveal it to the audience and not to her unless it served a purpose, which it doesn't, because we've been just following her. So now you have room to kind of go and play with that even more, and to show just how manipulative and how he pulled the wool over everyone's eyes, not just Tony's, but his own ex-police force, his business partners minus Sammy, like anybody he's ever interacted with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, it's all going to unravel now. So I'm not sure exactly. In the outline it's there, but of course, things have changed a little bit and I've moved things around. So who knows where it will go. But I think, just try and get as much out as possible and see where it goes.
Yeah, because I think like we've talked about it can be easier to work with something that's tangible and say, okay, we tried this road and we don't need to go quite all the way to where you went, so to speak, but you got to this point and we want to keep all this, and then what about if we move it here? It's the best kind of exercise, because then you can scale back and edit as you want to, rather than, you know what I mean, make slow progress and go, oh, where do I go now? Yeah.
I definitely feel like, you know, the kind of words of, you know, McKee are ringing in my ears about Chinatown. You know, was it, I forget how the expression he uses, but, you know, doing something, the thing about Chinatown, it just pushes all the boundaries and somehow makes it credible.
Mhm.
So I don't know whether I can do it with Browntown, but to make it to stand out, you've got to kind of push the envelope, haven't you? So anyway, I'm kind of, that's at the forefront of my mind this week, going back to it. It's like trying, you know, push the boundaries as much as possible.
Mhm. Yeah, but you have a great setup to be able to do that. And you know from the outline, much less what's been marinating for a long time, like what you want to say and where you want to go. So it's just
Totally.
now finding the time and then the focus, understandably, to be able to do it. So,
Dude, just before you tell me what your thoughts are, do you ever write a step or a scriptment? Do you use that yourself, or what? Or what's your approach? Depends.
I think I'm more the approach that like Wendy just talked about, which is I kind of have something in mind of where I want to go. So then it's kind of like, and I have little things that I know I want to see along the way, but I don't necessarily go from an outline or something that's all, you know, beaded out for me, and then I just kind of fill in the blanks. I know other writers that do that, and they do it very effectively. I haven't ever really been that way. It's kind of like it takes me a while to start something, but once I do, then I get it, and it kind of becomes its own thing. It'll take me into scenes and places that I didn't even envision to get to one that I did.
Yeah, it feels to me, you know, like I think if you're starting out as a writer, it's good to have, you know, stick to the program, as it were. But as you kind of develop, you kind of work out your own process, right? And this kind of, there's no, and everyone has their it's individualistic. It's a very kind of once the more developed you become as a writer, I think that's where it feels. I don't know whether that applies to you, but it feels, it sounds like it does. You know, you kind of, you have a method, and it's not necessarily the one that's in the books. It's kind of, but it's, you know, your own version of it.
Yeah, and I think the way that anyone's particular and specific individual brain works, like for me, I can kind of keep everything in my head that I want, and I see the full scope of something kind of all at once. But what I don't see is how I'm going to get there. But to me, that's part of the fun of just doing it.
That's a real skill, though, man. And you can see that's why you have, obviously, you have something like a photographic memory. You do give me that impression. That might not be true.
Just a very good memory is what. Really,
yeah, you do. You It's just the way you can talk about other people's work, and God knows how many scripts you've read this week and shit like that. And I'm like, fucking hell, you remember this character and that character? It's pretty impressive, dude.
Yeah, and I think, you know, memory is one of those things that it can come easier, but then it's just like a muscle. You have to work on it. But
oh, you can definitely train it. I mean, as you know, I used to be a lawyer back in the day. I don't know whether I've said that to you, but you know, you kind of, you know, it teaches. It definitely enhances one's memory. You know, that memory muscle. But if you don't use it, of course, it kind of fades away a little bit, especially as, you know, you reach my age.
25 is not old, Marty.
Thanks, dude. I wasn't really fishing, although slightly.
Just a little. Memorization was one of the things that they, I'm saying in a funny way, not thankfully a literal one, but they beat into us in school. We had to memorize like Bible verses, for example, every week. In addition, we had to memorize for class, and this is from when I was in like first grade, kindergarten. And I think because of that process, good or bad, on another level, right? It really enhanced that skill. And then studying acting and having these long monologues and pages of things to memorize, it all came pretty naturally, not simply, but naturally after that. So I think it's just intuitively, if I like something, like a script, for example. Like for this purpose, I kind of retain what I read. I don't remember everything, but I remember enough to where once someone even begins a sentence, I go, "Oh, okay, yeah, that's right, that thing happened," and can kind of keep it in its own compartment. Yeah.
I didn't realize you'd done. You're an actor as well, man. I didn't know that.
Yeah, my start was in theater, specifically in performance, which I think again really helps just in terms of getting in a character's mind and those kinds of things.
Oh my god, yeah. Well, I don't know whether I mentioned to you, but I'm going to do some acting as part of this master's thing.
You had, and I think that's really, really smart, and it's so much. I found it to be so liberating and so much fun. So,
how many years did you actually, you got your, like, whatever they call it over in your way, but like your equity card, etc. You still act if necessary. If you could get in front of the camera.
I would if I had an opportunity. I haven't done that in a long, long time, but
you'd like to.
Sure. I haven't really done much in front of the camera. Mine was more theater.
Right.
But I did 6 years of very solid, with a repertoire company.
I did not know that, man. What was the name of the company? What company?
Lyric Arts is the name of the group, and they're out of Minnesota, and they still are there, which is great. So, but I was there from their beginning and kind of helped them, build up as a part of that.
You were a founder of the theater group.
Not a founder, but I feel like I was in terms of I was there from their very first show to them actually moving into a huge space, which is when I left for California. So
did you write for them as well? Did you actually write some?
I did some writing. I did some.
Dude, that's fantastic. So that's where you started out. You started out as a playwright.
Yep.
Shit, man, that's old school. Mammoth, get your heart out.
Exactly. Very.
I like it, dude. That's very unusual for the States these days, isn't it? To go the theatre route. I wish there was more of it. In the UK, that's really, playwrights are still gods in the UK.
Right. Yeah, and they are in like New York and Chicago and somewhat in Minneapolis here, a little bit in LA, but otherwise people are like, the theater, what? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's not how I look at it, man. But anyway, dude, it's good to know. Cool.
Skill set. So in terms of the new pages, what do you envision the purpose of Sammy's brother being? Because he was a new addition and interesting.
Yeah, well, he's kind of like we need to see him earlier. So at the school, I think he's a contemporary of Nina, but there's a sixth form, so he's the one behind the drugs trade in the school.
Oh, cool. Okay.
That's the idea. And also he's stepping into Sammy's shoes at some point.
Like he's trying to he's too big for his britches kind of thing? Like he's trying to...
Well, it was more... I don't know whether... It's something I could leave open-ended because in terms of pitching it as a potential TV series, moving forward, this is a character that, you could explore within the TV series. So it's more that he's like, we talked a bit about it last week, it's between the adult, there's a strong thing in the script between the adult and the youth world and how, the drugs trade intersects between the two. So It's kind of like, between Tony and Nina, and she's exploring, the drugs and her own sexuality, and then between, Harry and Danny and the fact he's, smackhead and it's completely screwed their family and him and Harry himself as well. And then between, the drug dealers themselves, between Sammy and his brother.
Yeah, it's interesting too, because then their three relationships are kind of the three that you would have that, how would I say this? There are three that make a great impact, right? Because you have a mother and a daughter, you have a uncle and a nephew, and then you have brothers, which I think is really cool. That I like those layers a lot.
Thanks, man.
And
it feels good.
They're on different levels too, right? Because Nina is a very basic drug user. We almost wouldn't even call her that. You know, she's just
Yeah, she's just-
experimenting, right?
Yeah, it's just something teenagers would do every weekend. She's
Yep.
like that.
And
Yeah.
she could take it or leave it. She'll probably
Yeah.
call up and not use it at all, right?
That's so true, man.
We
That's
know-
exactly how
Right.
that's why that's how she's written. So I'm glad you see it that way.
Totally, because I know those people. It's like you hear about the stories of when they were in college or whatever time it
Yeah.
was. They don't touch it now. And then you have Danny, who's probably a lifelong addict if he doesn't change, which Harry knows. And then you have Sammy's brother, who, whether he's using his own product or not, is on his way to becoming as big or bigger than Sammy is, right?
Yes,
Cool.
exactly. Potential massive king, bit like Mikey, you know, in The Godfather.
Yeah.
But it would be much. I was setting him up more for potential series, so you could see him, you know, enter, or you know, Brown Town 2.
Yes, there we go. Return to Browntown. So on page 7 of the new stuff that you have, my only note there is to be careful of this conversation that you have with Tony and Harry, because it almost mirrors the conversation that he has a half scene before with the chief. Because Tony's bringing up the same issue to him. So just take a look at it. You can have them build off of each other, again, without her realizing.
Yeah, so it's repetitive. That's the date. That's what. Yes, I hear you, man.
Yeah.
That's what I was, you know, that's what I was kind of going on about. It's like, you know, just trying to bang it out. Yeah.
No, I get it.
It needs a bit of editing.
Yeah. And I'm here to help you do that just where it makes sense and whatever.
Yeah, thanks, man. I'll go back and check it. Thanks, dude.
I would have a Quasi state that he isn't sure where he's staying. So then Jimmy can just jump in and say, well, I'll make a call and get you set up at the B&B. Because then it makes Jimmy seem more endearing. And we kind of love him a little bit more because we're very close to the point where the reveal is going to come that he's not the guy that he's presenting himself to be.
Yeah, which was the original idea in the outline. It's just, you know, I haven't, dude, thanks for pointing it out. No problem. I totally agree.
I like Tony saying, well, he ain't staying here or whatever you have right now. But she can almost say that after, you know, like, well, there was no way he was going to stay here. It's still her little chide at her ex-husband, right? But it's not so blunt, I guess, because it doesn't maybe need to be. And it gives that little moment for Jimmy, which is cool.
Yeah, no worries, man. Thank you.
So I had a thought about, I know the controversial stair fall. We've been wondering whether you needed it and how to play it out. So now that you have it written, this is my thought for you. See what you think.
Yeah, cool, man.
I don't know that she needs to fall, but maybe I liked her snapping the photo, and maybe that there's a flash, which would freak her out because she thought she took care of that. That's going to call Jimmy over to the stairs to wonder what the hell happened. That will also give her a natural opportunity to drop her phone. And then the phone can fall to the bottom of the stairs. Jimmy can actually go and pick it up. And then the question for the audience, and thus for Tony, is whether he saw the last photo that she took, whether that's still on her screen or not.
Yeah, that's nice too, man.
Because naturally he would pick it up and look at it to make sure it's not cracked.
Yeah, that's a nice idea. You know, the whole thing with her going down the stairs, it's more the idea that he's capable of killing her. Does he really care? It's more so it's kind of flagging that up, the idea. So
I just don't think that we need her then at the hospital with the concussion. I think
it's too heavy-handed.
Well, and it just takes us too far away from what we're honing in on for that moment is really what it is. So I had another thought, which I'll come back to on that, which is
cool.
Maybe Kawazi can end up dead, and then you could parallel his dying with Danny in the hospital versus Tony in the hospital as it is now. Because if Quasi never makes it to the B&B, which Jimmy set up for him, like then you've alluded another thing is like, well, did Jimmy take him out too? We don't know.
I
don't know.
never thought about that.
I just think it could be cool because it's like, and maybe it's not a murder, maybe it's drugs because obviously
Yes.
the supplier was he's an addict. So
Yeah. That's really nice, dude. I
And
never considered that. That's a really nice twist.
I think it could be, and it's a callback to the dead girl at the B&B at the beginning, which is interesting too.
Yeah, and I wasn't sure whether to have the connection with the Paradise Seaview Paradise B&B. That's where he's staying, or might be a bit too heavy-handed again.
No, it could be.
But it's kind of
yeah.
But you got to work those things into a script. It just has it just kind of it complements the whole. It has the tone. So I don't know.
Yeah, play with it. You'll come up with something that makes sense on all levels without being too scripted, shall we say?
Yeah. A little bit too bloody obvious.
Right.
That's why I tried. Yeah, but the quasi thing, that's a really interesting idea.
Yeah, and it could be that he never goes to the B&B at all. Again, like they find him in his car and he's all jacked up, and he ODs in his car, which is cool because then you've alluded to the B&B without bringing us back there. So maybe that's the answer, something like that. Are you there?
Yeah.
The screen.
Yeah, I'm here. Sorry, man. I don't know what happened there. My internet just dropped off.
That's okay.
Sorry about that.
Did you hear what I said?
I'm not sure. It was about he never makes it to the Seaview Paradise, or he ends up dead in his car. I know.
Yes. So then what you've done is you've alluded to the B&B, which is a cool callback without taking us back there, which might be a little much.
Yeah, I really like it, dude.
Yeah.
It's just a whole storyline that I just hadn't considered. So, but it's really powerful.
Well, and I like it for Jimmy, right, to think evil for a minute, because it's like you showed up and you're, I don't know what you're doing with my woman and my daughter, you know what I mean? And it's like, I'm just going to remove you because you're nothing anyway. So it's kind of cool.
Yeah, no, it's really cool. It's very powerful indeed, man. Thank you.
Yeah.
And it needs a little bit of thought to make it work, but I would give it some thought.
Yeah, and just see if it makes sense, because you don't have to necessarily tie up his storyline, but since you've introduced him, it might be cool to tie it up quickly with him, dropping off. I
definitely thought of him. Whether he gets involved with. You just see him. He's part of that world, the junkie world. That he goes to the B&B, shags a prostitute. He's just like he's just a fuck up. But yeah, I will definitely have a good think about it. Thank you, man.
And I just like the idea of Harry's on his way to see Danny, who's
in the hospital. It's a really nice parallel. Definitely.
You could just literally watch them pass each other, and they put the cover over Kawazi because he's passed, and Danny still has hope. But anyway, you get the idea.
No, dude, that's really. I mean, just going back and watching Breaking Bad, they're so brilliant at making those, juxtapositions. They do it all the time, and so beautifully. And I'm just thinking, I could do with a few of those. So there you go.
So in the conversation that Catherine, right, our chief inspector, right, has with Tony, I think it might be interesting if she doesn't say much at all about Jimmy, because then it gives Tony a beat where she thinks maybe she might have made a mistake in even bringing Jimmy up to her. It almost might play into a paranoia, because it's like, if Jimmy knows everybody in town and he was part of the police force, did he know Catherine? You know,
That's much stronger because it's much more thematic about the idea of who can she trust.
right.
Dude, that's really good.
It makes it more isolated. Like now she just needs Harry, you know, because and not because Catherine's necessarily evil. I'll let you play with that, but more like she's contemplating what this could mean. That's why she says nothing. But if you're Tony, like that silence is going to be deafening, I would think.
I feel like that's the way to go. I mean, it's very much the whole script is kind of Tony's POV, and yeah, there are, you know, other than Tony, it's Harry and Nina. But to go too far any other way, you lose its power, I think. So
Right.
if I stick to that, that's really good, man. Thank you.
Yeah,
That's
no, it's
great.
just fine tuning it. So, like,
I think that's a great note. Thanks, dude.
like I don't think that you need Catherine to say who, because I think Tony would state his name, right? Which is also just a nuance of the dialogue that you have there. But I think Catherine would know Jimmy by name, maybe even just as Jimmy, because you know he's been a part of the town and the police for a long.
It's like a famous cop. Yeah.
Yeah,
Dude, thank you. I mean, it feels completely overwritten. That's when I was going. I was like, how the fuck can I deal with it? But yeah,
it's called a first draft, my friend. So it's all good. It's going to be overwritten, and then you go, oh, this is what I needed to get to. This is a better way to do it.
But that's just, thank you so much for, I really like the idea of thinking about the theme, which is, you know, trusting the people you love, trusting people in general, but trusting the people you love, and what happened, and betrayal.
Exactly. And then what things appear on the surface, because now you have the highest level of the police force in town. You think the one person you could trust, and now you're unsure even about her.
There's kind of like a beat, I don't know, you remember, you know, there's where Truella, she sees Harry outside having a smoke, and she says to him, you know, make sure you bloody put on your best bib and tucker for the morning and blah, blah, blah. But it's kind of like there's a beat there where you think, well, they're kind of on the same page. Right. She knows he's a corrupt bastard, but she's tolerated it, or she's part of it. You could think that. Right. Especially if you play... Dude, that's not really nice. So it just plays into that as well.
Yep. See, you're a genius. You just have to get out of your own way. And
you are. No, you are, dude.
If this wasn't all here, there'd be no way to even bounce these things off of. So, yeah, that's the fun part of development, is like coming alongside the writer and saying, oh, where could you go, or where do you want to go? And, you know, because you had to choose the themes and you had to set up all the characters to even have this as a possibility. So,
well, that's very sweet of you to say, but man, this is why the incubator is so awesome. It's just like it's just like you're my editor, dude. It's amazing.
It's true. Someone used that analogy before, and that's right. You know, but for us, meaning all of us on the call, like for us to have that opportunity for 4 weeks and keep accountable and keep focusing and keep editing, so to speak, as the case may be. I mean, it is a really, really powerful tool. So it's
the best learning. I mean, besides actually having an editor, it's the best learning tool I've ever had. So, dude, thank you.
Yeah, and I would encourage you, if you don't, like, see if you can find even a writer or two that you just trust their voice, and that would be safe to show your work to, because, you know, and certainly keep using Roadmap for that reason as well. But it's important to kind of have progress, be able to show it, and then get that feedback of people that are seeing the same vision, but, you know, aren't in that cave with you to help edit and focus the work. So,
well, you know, as part of this MA, we have like a little writing group within that. I haven't really got to the point where there's one dude in particular I am sharing, but he hasn't read this script yet. Sure. But there's a group of us, you know, as a little writing group, and we do trust each other, and it's all about the collaborative process. So yeah, I do kind of have that, but haven't really used it to its best yet, but it will come.
Oh, sure. Yeah. And once, you know, you're kind of completed with the program and things too, that will linger on after, which is good. That makes sense. you guys are focused
yeah.
on schoolwork.
Totally.
It's tough. Yeah.
But I did, yeah. Until I got involved with Roadmap and doing this course, I didn't have anyone like that. So,
Right.
but it's so important. It's so important to be able to bat ideas off people and just constantly be fine tuning stuff, but expressing it, not just in one's head, right?
Right. Exactly.
I mean, it's like you're doing this 24/7 pretty much, aren't you, dude? Discussing ideas and blah blah blah. It's like like I said, I don't know how you managed to focus in on whatever one script out of 30 or more, or whatever's going on in your head at the moment. I assume, how many scripts are you working on with your clients?
Oh, I don't even want to take a venture. It'll probably freeze everything that's working well.
All right, dude. Anyway, thank you so much. If we finish, thank you so much for those really, really strong notes. Thanks, man.
Yeah. No, I'll look forward to seeing how close you get to the end next week. Not as pressure, but as encouragement for you.
I'm going to do my best, man.
Sounds good. Sweet.
Thanks, dude.
Of course. And Miss Jana, how are you?
The werewolf sandwich here.
Yes, my
Okay,
favorite kind of meal.
First, I got to tell
Yum,
you,
yum.
and Marty, you'll be interested in this too. My manager does not like my unforgiving script. She doesn't like my narrator, remember, which I do. At first, I was worried about it, but I think it's pretty cool. She doesn't like the way we opened with it. She wants to add another. There's one person in there that she, at 14, this woman willingly has sex with and has another baby. And I left it out because, to me, it changes the dynamic of how people will see her. Like at first we're saying like she's been raped and all this, which she was. And then at 14, she's willingly having sex with this older guy. To me, I think it could bring in this, questioning whether or not she was raped, I guess.
Right.
But anyway, so I think that was kind of interesting.
No, it is. That doesn't take away anything from what you did with the script at all. If the opening changes and come up with something better, that's awesome.
Yeah, I'm gonna do everything they ask.
Yeah.
It's just interesting, and I knew this script would be difficult because, number one, it's her passion project, and then after we get that, I still have to take it to the woman whose life it is.
I know.
I think that's going to be tough.
But I think that you did an incredible job from what you were, so to speak, forced to handle compared to where you got it to, which doing that in the 3 or 4 weeks that we did was phenomenal. So what will come next now that you're like, okay, and working on that? Will
Absolutely.
Good.
I think of it like a sculptor takes this big chunk of clay.
Yes.
And if you look at it at first, you think that's nothing. And then, as you do it, it's still nothing. And then maybe you do a good arm, but then it's a blob over here. And I think people have to view writing like that. Like it doesn't look like anything till you're completely finished.
Yeah.
And you have to be able to look beyond the process, I think. But anyway, still another challenge.
Yes. Well, keep me posted on it. I would say, to use your very accurate sculpting example, like what you did is you took a huge chunk of clay, and at least by the end of it, we go, oh, that's a person. That's cool.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I don't think, I really would not even expect it to be done after your first draft. I can't even imagine having a first draft and somebody thinking it's good even. You know what I mean? It's just the beginning.
Yes, which is very smart of you. I would say, though, that even with that last draft that you did, this last completed one,
right,
the story is very clear. Whether the ways into the story or through the story work for everyone that would read it is a whole other question, but there's no question that whoever would read that start to finish would get the entire scope of her life.
Yeah.
And then be able to say, yeah, that's something that we need to talk about and work on, or no, I pass because it's
right.
tough or whatever the issue.
And I've also been working on Military Club. I'm not done yet, but it's definitely improved.
Cool.
Yeah, thank you for that. Okay, werewolf.
I was gonna howl, but I won't.
No, do it.
Yeah, howl, then they have me on the recording that'll be repeated for. So did this come from just learning about the Shaolin wolf kind of legend, or how did it spark for you?
Yeah, exactly. I wanted to do horror, but not traditional horror, to see if I could. I'm kind of interested in like merging genres. I think that's kind of an interesting thing.
Yeah.
And with all the social change going on, I was really thinking like, like I was telling you, that the werewolf really wants to be seen from what he does instead of what he looks like. It's really kind of a racial comparison. So I just thought that would be interesting to place it inside that world and see if I could come up with something just to make people think beyond the traditional.
Yeah, and I think that that's really smart. And I would, as a whole, over the whole thing, I would encourage you to dive into that even further.
Okay.
This is the wrong movie, but you'll get it. I would use like Get Out more as your framework, where
Yes.
we think it's this, but it's really talking about something heavier.
Yes. Yeah.
I think I wrote this too because you used it in your note, but I think Frankenstein really is the best comparison of it.
Okay.
Frankenstein with a racial kind of element, like the human stain almost, where he's very misunderstood. As a whole, I have to tell you, the action scenes are phenomenal, like really clearly written. They're not really overwritten, which I find even myself, I envision everything like I would probably direct it, so I write it that way, and that can be problematic because then you're not giving the director anything to do. But you did a good job of framing everything and then kind of leaving it, knowing what the end result of whatever the fight was, of course. But you didn't spell out every flip.
Right.
You know what I mean? Yeah, which is smart. So to dive in, and I wrote these in linear order, so some of them you end up answering later. But I wrote them, and I think even mentioning them will just be like, okay,
Yeah,
for you.
absolutely.
So right now it takes about 14 pages or so to set up what at least I suspected right off the bat, which is that Gorman is a werewolf.
Right.
So I don't think it's a problem to let the audience know that, because there wasn't a lot of suspense as to whether that was true. So what you do with that, I'll just kind of leave. But that was
shorten it or show it sooner, like we could know right away that it's him.
Yes. So the answer to both questions is yes.
Okay.
I think you could shorten it because letting us know right away that that's who he is cool.
Do you
and
think?
It works fine.
What do you think if I reveal it the moment you meet him?
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that.
Okay.
You could literally like have him working up the courage to ask her out like he is, and like he starts to feel the change and we don't know what's wrong with him. It's like, is this guy on the spectrum? Is he having a seizure, or like what's going on? And then he has to leave, and then boom, he's transformed by page 2 or whatever.
Okay.
This isn't necessarily bad or good, but it did bother me just a little bit that he says the title of the script on page 14.
Okay. Should we not say it at all, or was it awkward?
I'm just throwing it out to you. Because when that happens in a movie, like the worst example of recent times to me was Lord of the Rings, right? Like in the first movie, the lead elf, who I can't remember his name, but he turns to him, he says, "You are the Fellowship of the Ring," and he practically turns to the camera and goes, "Get it?" This wasn't that bad. But
generally, you never say it? Is that kind of your position?
Generally, if it's a title like this, right? If it was a title like, bad example, but it's the first thing that came to mind, SWAT. SWAT is a general term, and it makes sense as the title of the movie, so that's not, you get what I'm saying.
Yeah, I got it. Yeah. Okay. I don't have a problem.
So I wrote, again, this in linear order, which you answered by the end, but I wrote, what does the monk teach you in the opener have to do with the rest of the film, which I got.
Okay.
So I'm not worried about that note.
Okay.
Why do you imagine Tyler has the camera? Or maybe a better question is, does he know that it was possible that he could film a werewolf? Or is he just one of these guys that carries a camera everywhere in the hopes of finding material?
Yeah, he's a camera guy, so he's like always carries it.
Okay, yeah. So maybe just a beat.
Okay, why does Tyler have a camera?
Yeah, and either way you want to go is acceptable. You could even have someone say, "Would you get out from behind that thing?" Or "You always have that thing." Or whatever.
Yeah. Okay.
So Master Lee, one of the biggest notes I had is I think he needs to be set up better.
Okay.
And I think that his temple or his place, if you will, his world, you could set up even more. I think I'm saying this to you as a writer, not necessarily the framework of the script, but there could be more fairy tale almost, more like the legend of as a backdrop for this, and maybe that plays into the Frankenstein kind of thing more.
Okay.
Where do you envision that this takes place?
Like a Colorado, Utah, somewhere with
Or Pacific Northwest or something like that?
Yeah, that'd be beautiful. Or
Cool.
I guess it could be the like New Hampshire kind of place too.
Yeah, it might be interesting to name it. Again, I'm not saying that you should.
Okay.
It kind of brings you into whatever that place is. Like, if this is in Oregon, I'm picturing mist and tall trees, and I don't know. I kind of liked it, but I'm going
So
out.
sometimes I don't do that so that if somebody's reading it, they can kind of
Yes.
imagine where they'd want to shoot it. But you think
Yeah.
something because they can change it anyway.
Yeah, and for this, it felt like the terrain kind of could make a difference, you know?
Yeah, you're right.
Because, like, as we know, there's different types of woods in Utah, for example, versus Oregon. Yeah.
Right.
And just to be sure, we're not in a world where werewolves are considered real or we've ever seen them before, right? So Tyler's footage is kind of the first
Yeah.
that we've seen. Okay. So I think to go into the Frankenstein myth, the town's reaction to Tyler's video was a little bit subdued. I think you could play that up more.
Pump it up.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's almost like you could have the really outlandish people who are, you know, probably in line with like the world's going to end, you know, kind of folks. You get where I'm going.
Yeah.
Yeah. But play that up, and I know that you'll find a balance between it being like overtly like eye-rolling and
Right.
believable. Yeah. On page 21, I wrote the yin and yang. That was a really, really phenomenal idea. And I know that that's the core of kind of the Shaolin teaching, but also with the werewolf man thing.
Yes.
That might even be a great thing to open with.
Okay.
Just because it sets everything up really nicely for people that will get it from the film.
Yeah.
One thing I had to point out, and I'm not necessarily a spelling person, but on the top of page 23, it should be wolves, and you had, and I don't know how spell check let you, but WOLFS, wolves.
No, I appreciate spell problems. I those really bother me when I read. Even when I read a novel, if there's a word misspelled, it really drives me crazy. So I appreciate when people point those out.
Yeah, and you don't have really much in your writing usually, but that one was funny to me, so I had to point it out. Wolves, interesting.
It is funny.
Yeah, so this ties in with the town folks. So on page 31, you had written like the whole city's kind of freaking out. And if that's the case, we should see that, just moments of it. Everything from people buying weapons to people staying in to maybe there's a city ordinance. I don't know. You can, your mind can go all over with that. Mm-hmm. So another idea for you was this hunter-wolf dream sequence, which is page 34. That's another part that almost could be the opener. Just
Okay.
throwing it out there because it was really cool too, and it sets things up well.
Okay.
And a thought for you, I'm sure you've seen Jaws.
Yes.
So Roscoe, you could play him up to be a little more like Quint.
Yes.
It's like he shows up when the town needs him, and he could have a huge entrance. Don't have his nails run down the chalkboard like Quint, but something.
Okay. So back to the dream sequence. I'm not in favor of this generally, but what do you think about opening with the flashback sequence, rather, not dream flashback sequence, and then come to present day? You think yes?
I'm fine with it because I think you could use the easy version would be you could use the teachings of Master Li, where he had him take himself back to that moment to learn something, and that feels really right for something like this.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm not saying I do or don't like it, but when he was skateboarding, that reminded me of Teen Wolf, like the movie that Michael J. Fox. Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah, just saying.
That's a good point. What page was that?
Roughly page 40 some.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then in talking about the yin and the yang, because it came up again like roughly 30 pages later, which I think is such a great just theme overall. And this idea that it's hard for him to turn the monster off, that it's a constant like suppression of self, which is just beautiful, and it ties into the whole thing. So play that up in terms of how the town reacts to him, how he reacts to himself. The more you can kind of show us both sides and the constant battle that's going on with that, the more powerful this will be. How does Roscoe have a pheromone reader? And did he create it himself? Walk me through kind of what that is.
Yeah, I kind of see him as a gadget guy. Like he creates all these weird things. So he's, he's got all these different detectors and meters on him.
Okay.
What do you think? Did it not sound?
Well, I like that idea, but I think maybe just in the writing then show us more of that. Even when he first appears with whatever you want to do for an even bigger entrance, he can have something that, and it depends on tone, how outlandish you want to make this kind of tongue-in-cheek fun adventure, or you want to be really dark and serious. I feel like it's more on the adventure side out of the two, right? Yeah. So he could point at someone with some device, and then it can expand, and then he lights a cigarette. You know what I mean? You can do those stupid things with someone like him. Because it feels a little like I think they did that in the last Van Helsing movie, where he had kind of these modern devices or more modern devices, and yet it's set in the past. It shouldn't be that, and I know that's not what you intended, but it made for an interesting visual because it was obvious he was different.
Yeah.
So in linear order, I wrote, how does Sam know Kung Fu? And I'm assuming because he was trained by Master Li too, which we kind of find out at the end.
Sam is just isolated except for the monks, really.
Yeah, and I think that's
you probably mentioned that, right?
Yes, that's what I was going to say. I would like to have known that because I think it kind of adds to their whole.
Yeah. It's a logic hole, kind of. Yeah.
And it makes sense too because they have that junkyard that's separate from the town, like it would be, and all of that stuff, which is cool.
Do you think Sam should not know Kung Fu?
I mean, I think that'd be even better, or could be even better.
It's just
Foreman's thing, yeah.
That kind of makes sense to me now that you pointed that out. Okay.
So on page 66, Bear could say he was brought to the junkyard on a tip.
Okay.
I picture he could think on his feet to come up with a reason, even though obviously that's not true.
Right.
what is Roscoe's background? I get what his motive is, but what inspired him to be this ruthless hunter?
Okay. I don't know that.
You know, if we're playing in the kind of fairy tale-ish world, obviously his family being killed or his daughter or something, you know what I mean? It'd be something like that, but
Some kind of connection why he would it'd be his life purpose.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
It might
Well,
be
there's a
interesting
tradition,
too.
right?
Yeah, there is. It might be interesting too, and this is just purely off the cuff, and maybe it's a horrible idea, but what if he fell in love with someone who ended up being a wolf, who then tried to kill him because they couldn't master themselves, and so he's hated the species ever since, or, you know, that would be a little bit different than what we've seen where.
It would, and that kind of plays into the theme of loving the person instead of what they, the
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
and not to get on a soapbox, but it could even be that he was starting to fall for a man, you know, and then finds out and that was already a difficult thing to overcome, and then you know what I mean?
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. And that the other kind of big note overall is Master Lee. I think you could play into more character for him, because right now he's a little bit kind of cliche. Until the very, very end when we're like, oh, you know, he was a wolf too, or dealing with
So
this.
are you saying like a little more background on him or a little more screen time?
Maybe both.
Okay.
If no background, then keep him really mysterious. Because then we might think of him going on as kind of just the mentor character, you know. It's almost like the first Star Wars movie. You have very limited information on Obi-Wan Kenobi, right? We just know he was this great warrior, and that's about it. But you get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I really like this. I think there's something really interesting about Haley and Gorman and Tyler and Zoe,
Right.
you know, coupling up. So I like where you were going with that.
Okay.
I liked Tyler's edit, like of the footage and kind of revealing what he wants and not revealing everything. That was really cool. Roscoe being Sam's killer, I think that you could bring that out a little bit more. I think the way that it kind of happened and was revealed wasn't as powerful maybe as us and Gorman seeing it happen.
So say that again now.
So Roscoe, you reveal that he was the one that killed Sam because we think that it's Bear, right, and his guy.
Yes.
It might play off of something in Gorman to have him see that and thus the audience to see that.
Okay. The murder.
Yeah, because that might be even naturally it would seem like it'd be even more difficult for him to control the beast, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So it would give him a bloodlust for Roscoe in a way that is even more powerful than seeing his mom's head and those other moments that he has.
Yeah. Okay.
Let's see. Oh, and that leads me to another thing. So when Roscoe does show Gorman his mother's head, that can have and should have a real emotional impact, a trigger like from the past, but I don't know that it's as powerful as it could be now.
Okay. More emotional reaction.
Exactly. Almost overwhelming. You know, maybe, you know, the bad version of the visual would be that he's transforming in and out of a werewolf multiple times, signifying that he can't control himself at all.
Yeah.
Yeah. And is the Shaolin way, is that tied in like with Buddhism specifically or certain philosophical you know, kind of techniques, or I'm not sure like about that, but maybe walk me through it.
The action techniques or?
Yeah, well, just like even the idea of Kung Fu, I know is based on not just self-defense, but there's a owning of your body and your spirit and a uniting of the two that goes into that. So
Right.
it might be because of the kind of thing that you're writing, the kind of film, that some of those philosophies can come out even more.
Okay.
Just a thought. I think it might add some color to it. I don't know that you need them, but they might be fun if every now and then Gorman is spouting one or the other. He repeats that kind of mantra about controlling himself, which is great. So if there's like something else, maybe tries to help other people by, Master Lee says this, so I'm going to say this to you too. It could be just fun.
Like trying to teach other people what he's
Yeah.
learned from Master Lee.
Platitudes, if you will, or yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, but very cool. I think that Frankenstein kind of note and having a good portion of the town kind of riled up and going up to the junkyard and the temple, and they're going to take it down and remove the town from these horrible things and people that are up there, and having that be stopped, because of the value that Gorman actually has, and Tyler can certainly help with that, and Will and Haley and Zoe, especially because they're using media to show the truth, which is cool. Yeah, I think that's going to lead up to a great moment.
So let me ask you this. So normally you want the hero to do the final act, and I really have Master Lee kind of doing the final act. Did you have a problem with that at all?
Well, I think that it should be more Gorman than Master Lee, but I think Master Lee can serve a great purpose, and maybe it is similar to Star Wars, where it's one of sacrifice, right?
Well, see, here's what I'm thinking, because the whole thing, Gorman is trying to control himself. He's trying not to kill, except for, he's trying to live the tenets.
Yes.
So at the very end, to have him kill seems to me that he loses instead of wins.
Right.
But that the fact that Master Lee at the very end, in a kind of a short scene, really does the killing, I think is kind of an interesting twist, in that Master Lee is the one who keeps saying these things, but he is overriding his principles this time to make the kill.
So I think it's a harmony of both. I think, first of all, yes, you need to extend that last scene. And I think it could be more, and it's funny because I used this earlier in an analogy, but almost like a Disney ending, right? Which I'll walk you through what I mean. If you think of Beauty and the Beast, which is very specific and close to this, and in this one sense.
Yeah, no, it is, yeah.
Right, Gaston keeps coming for the Beast, and the Beast doesn't want to harm him because he's learned not to, right? Which is Gorman.
Right.
So if you have Roscoe keep coming for him, and Gorman gets him to a place where Roscoe's injured, but he's not going to die, we understand that Gorman's not going to kill him. But then if Roscoe does one last thing that Master Lee sees, it's going to result in Gorman's death. So Master Lee jumps in and kills him. Then I think you've played off that moment in the perfect way.
Okay, gotcha.
But I think the battle should be between Gorman and Roscoe up until that point.
Okay, got
Because
it.
then no one will really see Master Lee coming at all in that way. Yeah.
So the other thing I was thinking, because I have him then leaving, but he's going to have to stay in order to have that final battle, if I have it at the monastery. But what if Gorman comes just in time to see that he's going to kill Master Lee? Then Gorman kills the werewolf, because now it's a matter of life.
Well, that would be another way to play it, and that would make sense too. So I just kind of, muse on both of them and see what makes sense.
Okay.
And then that's playing off just to keep spouting it back or throwing it back and forth with you. That plays off of yin and yang, because there is life and death. And yes, it isn't ours to take life, but at the same time, a life is going to be taken, and in that sense, whose, and yeah. It's all about motive and things at that moment.
Okay. Sounds good. Love it.
Yeah, very good. Cool. So do you plan to work on this, or what do you want to do for next week?
I don't know.
Probably too, but
let me see what I can get done on the military. I would love to have you take another look at military if I can get it completed, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe switch back and forth, with the writing, but
How many scripts have you got on the go, Yana?
I have a ton of scripts.
That's bloody impressive. Jeez. So how much is a ton? Like this many?
I probably have 30. I don't know.
Shit.
Or so.
It's insane.
They're all in different shape too. Like some I don't think I would say are, that good, and some need to be improved, and some are ready to go.
Wow, that's quite a portfolio though. That's amazing. I could chuck some my way. I'll have them.
I'll have you work on them. Improve them for me.
Everyone will be like, why is this woman's name crossed out and your name's on it?
Right, dude, thank you for a great session, man.
Yeah.
Oh, of course. Absolutely. My pleasure.
And everyone have a good week, whatever you're up to. Working, obviously.
And we'll talk Game of Thrones, and we'll just have Jana do this.
Oh yeah, dude. So what time? What's the time where you are? You've got a few hours, haven't you? 4 hours. What time's it on?
Are you guys saying that this season is not good? I'm
saying that, and I will say it unequivocally. But that shouldn't stop you from watching. And like we said, in all truth.
Now, why is it bad? What is your analysis of why it's bad?
Sure. So from a quick non-disclosure analysis, all the buildup that they've been so carefully crafting is now being rushed through. It's like
the payoffs suck.
Yeah. It's like, I was saying this before you got on the call. It's like a baseball team that has a perfect season, which is an almost impossibility. And then they get to the playoffs and they forgot everything that brought them to that climactic game. Yeah.
So I hear that there's one character, which is a woman, who has totally gone off character.
Yes and no. You can see the threads of it. What happened was it happened that fast, and it's like, no.
Just haven't been. The women have been poorly written in the last season, which is.
I would say the woman who's gone off character, it's because she doesn't have a really good antagonist anymore. She's suddenly become the antagonist.
Really?
So yeah.
Yes, that's a good way to put it. Yeah.
Yeah, but I would say most of the women have been badly written, so it's kind of like, hello, dude.
That's the adult cat, Wendy.
Yeah, that's the senior.
And then she has kittens too. Show Jana. I don't think Jana saw them.
Yeah, let me flip cameras really quick.
We have kitty cam. Here we go.
Kitty cam.
Look at them.
Oh my goodness.
And those are little 4-week-old Fosters.
Oh, so you have like.
I couldn't see what they were from where I am. They just could have been anything. Oh, I can see now. Cuties.
Yeah. I can.
Oh my God! Now I could. Yeah, you couldn't see them properly.
There we go. Now I'm waking them up.
Your camera does something really weird, Wendy, where we've got like a third of a screen of you.
Oh, interesting.
Hang on, let me.
That's better. Now we've got you.
There you go.
Thank you.
So there's the kitten cam.
So are you like a foster mom to cats?
I'm just starting to do that. Because it's Angeles and it is high kitten season.
There we go.
See, I'm on my iPad, and it's easier to hold it steady when it's the other way, when it's long ways.
Right.
So, anyway.
Yes.
But yeah, so I have one senior who's probably 16 years old, and 2 4-month-olds currently that my senior is tolerating, but I don't think they're going to be foster fails. So here you go. I'm writing about werewolves, but I have a cat pack here.
Close enough. Yeah.
All right, fantastic. Well, thank you, Justin.
Of course. Thank all of you. Have a great week.
Thank
and
you.
We'll be together next Sunday.
Sounds good.
Latest,
Bye.
dudes.
All right.
Bye,
Bye,
everybody.
Marty. Bye, Wendy.
Ciao.